from the subject operating system CS8493. So the core subject is to understand the concept of file system and interprocess communication in Linux. So file system. As far as the Linux is concerned, Linux file system is a hierarchical directory obeying Unix semantics. So the Linux virtual file system in design and object-oriented principle is composed of four components: inode object, file object, super block object, and entry object. Inode object structure represents an individual file. The file object represents an open file. The super block object represents an entire file system. A D-entry project represents an individual directory entry. File system appears as a hierarchical directory obeying Unix semantics. Example is open, read, write, memory mapping. ext3 is a standard on-disk file system for Linux. It uses a mechanism similar to that of a fast file system for locating data blocks belonging to a specific file. Supersedes older extfx ext2 file system. Work underway on ext4, adding features like extents. Many file systems with Linux. It has a block group. It has a default block size of ext3 varies as a function of total size of system. It supports 1, 2, 4 and 8 KB blocks. ext2f block allocation, allocating scattered free blocks, allocating contiguous free blocks. So those blocks in blue color will be block selected by the allocator. So those ash color blocks will be in use. The white color will be in free blocks. It's a bit binary, and bitmap search will be in the relation. Journaling. ext3 implements journaling, which with file system updates first written into a log file in the form of transaction. Once in a log file considered committed, over time log file transaction replayed over file system to put changes in place. On system crash, some transaction might be journal but not yet placed into the file system, must be completed once system recovers. No other consistency checking is needed after a crash. Improves write performance on a hard disk by turning random IO into CPU. The Linux procedure file system that does not store data, rather its contents are computed on demand according to user file IO request. So Proc file system must implement with a directory structure, file contents, and then a unique persistent inode structure for each directory. It collects appropriate information, formats it into text form, and places it in the requesting process. Interprocess communication. Linux informs processor in event via signals. The Linux kernel does not use signals to communicate with the processor, which are running in the kernel mode. It uses scheduling states and wait queue structures. So it uses a semaphore. Process can wait for a signal or a semaphore. Semaphore scales better. Operations of semaphore can be atomic. And we having the pipeline system, it allows a child process to inherit the communication from its parent. The data written by the process to a shared memory region can be read immediately by another person and has to map it to a region to its address space. For the synchronization, the shared memory must be used in conjunction with another PC mechanism. Networking structure. Networking is a key area of the functionality of Linux. Networking is implemented by three layers: socket layer, protocol drivers, network device drivers. So most important set of protocols in the Linux networking system is the Internet Protocol suite. It implements routing between different hosts anywhere on the network. On top of the routing protocol are built the TCP, UDP and ICMP protocol. Protocols packets also pass to firewall management for filtering based upon the firewall security is a pluggable authentication module. So it's based on shared library that can be used by any system component that needs to authenticate users. So access control will be user ID and a group ID. So it has a protection mask for read, write and execute. There will be a permission will be given to process of the owner group access. It has a set user ID mechanism that allows a client to selectively pass access to a single file to some server process without granting it to any user privileges. I explain in detail about the file system in Linux. Thank you.